Hi everyone, welcome to Little Wicket Railway. I'm Rob, and in this video we're taking a quick look at Hornby's half-year report, their latest January trading statements and the 2025 product range that was announced earlier this week. I've become very interested in the performance of Hornby plc since I discovered they really aren't doing very well as a business. They've been making big losses for years, a lot of their stock just isn't selling, and they've racked up large borrowing debts. And I made a video about that situation. I'll put a link to it up here if you want to go check it out. Hornby's board have a 3-year plan to turn the company around though, and I'm interested to see what changes they're implementing to make the UK's best loved model manufacturer profitable again. Obviously, we as consumers don't get to see the full details of what they've got planned, but we can kind of get a sense of what's going on from the information that's released publicly. And because Hornby plc is a listed company, there's actually quite a lot of information. On their investor relations page, you can see all the regulatory news, and not only do they have to publish annual reports, but they also have to publish half-year interim reports and regular trading statements, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. Earlier this week, they also revealed their 2025 railway product range, so we'll also look at that and see if there are signs that it's being influenced by the changes in the business. Starting with the half-year report, which came out a couple of months ago now, and it covers the period from the 1st of April 24 to the 30th of September 24. So it's kind of old news, but it still gives us an indication of what direction the business is going in, how things have changed since the previous annual report, and it's a chance for management to give their perspective on the performance. So the report starts with an update from management on a few key areas. And when reading these updates, it's important to remember that they'll generally always be written in a way that maybe emphasises the perceived positives and downplays the more negative stuff. Also, if you're like me, then you associate Hornby with railway models, but it's important to remember that Hornby also owns Scalextric, Airfix and a number of other brands, and the results don't differentiate between them. Right, getting into the report, and it starts by setting the scene that they're halfway through a 3-year turnaround plan, and they spent the first third of that time doing a strategy and planning session. Now they're onto the action bit, and they're starting to see some results from what they've implemented, and that all seems fair enough. But then they reiterate that they've still got challenges around capex, cost, inventory and debt that we already knew about, so the situation doesn't seem to have changed that much in 6 months. And I suppose that's to be expected because half a year really isn't that long for a business to make changes and see significant results. But it'll be interesting to see in the numbers if things have improved at all, stayed the same or are getting worse. The next section is all about insight-driven decision making. I've temporarily escaped the corporate world and I forgot what reading these reports is like. The term insight-driven is borderline corporate speak for me, and I'm not sure I particularly like it. Further down they use baked in and robust data, but basically Hornby are now using data to make decisions. But this report makes it sound like it's a completely new concept for them. And I don't know if the head of insights role was intended to just be a 1-year contract, but it looks like that's how long it lasted, and the head of insights left earlier this month. By doing some market research though, they discovered that Scalextric has inaccessible pricing, that Airfix serves its existing loyal and valuable customers, but hasn't seen macro brand growth, and so they need to explore new Airfix subject matter to attract new audiences. And they hinted at this before. I think the new head of insights came from Lego, and Lego changed from producing basic kits with standardized colored bricks into a really diverse range of products, including sets based on TV and film, architecture and even plants. So who knows what subject matter Airfix might decide to have a go at in the future. And when it comes to model railways, the report says the Hornby brand provides wonderful, high-quality product and experiences for established railway hobbyists. However, our insights work highlights that it is through strengthening our entry-level proposition and continuing to support the TT120 scale that we will attract new customers for future growth. Now, I've reviewed a lot of models, and it's my opinion that, in general, Hornby are currently not competing with the likes of Rapido, Accurascale, Cavalex. That's just my opinion based on observations over the last few years, but I don't think I'm alone. I would have preferred a statement along the lines of, we recognise that the market for high quality models has become more competitive over recent years, and we're committed to ensuring that the products we produce are market leading in terms of quality, innovation and value. But to me, and again this is just my interpretation, it seems that Hornby are less concerned about producing quality 00 scale models and are going to focus on entry level stuff such as train sets and on developing TT120, basically with a focus on new modelers. And that's possibly good for railway modelling as a hobby and great news if you're into TT120. Whilst I was doing some research onto the insight side of things, I came across this white paper called Hornby Hobbies Presents Return of the Hobby. And I don't know whether you've seen this, but apparently a company called Disrupt Insights produced this for Hornby, and who knows how much they spent on getting them to do it. But it's a combination of the incredibly obvious and the completely irrelevant. They surveyed 2,000 people and found out that most of those people have a hobby. And I'm not talking about a hobby that's relevant to Hornby, I mean any hobby. Gardening, gaming, running, music, anything. Surely that's not a surprise to anyone. And it turns out that doing those hobbies made the people doing them happier in some way. So we're not all masochists punishing ourselves with hobbies we hate. What exactly did someone type into the stock footage library to get this, by the way? Then we've got interviews with Irene and Julie who like dolls' houses, which has absolutely nothing to do with anything that Hornby produces. But maybe you've wondered whether people do their irrelevant hobby together or on their own. Well, me neither, and who cares, but the white paper has the meaningless stat. And this will blow your mind. People spend time and money on their hobbies. Who knew? More incredible stock imagery here. Maybe some analysis by age group will provide some extraordinary insight. And what do you know? Younger people like video games and are more physically active than older people. What a shocker. There are some bold claims made on this page, with scale modelling being on a par with racket sports, which I find incredibly hard to believe. ChatGPT also found that hard to believe, suggesting there are over 2 million people regularly playing racket sports and less than 1 million doing scale modelling. And out of the 2,000 people surveyed, only 102, or around 5%, did some form of model making, and 3 of the 6 model makers interviewed were into dolls' houses. Why does Hornby care what 1,900 people who don't do scale modelling think about their hobby? I just don't get how something like this is at all useful. Hopefully, when the half-year report says that decisions are now insight-driven, they don't mean these particular insights. Presumably there are other better insights doing the driving. Anyway, back to the half-year report. The next section, called New Territories and New Routes to Market, is actually pretty interesting. They're breaking into the US market and have managed to get Airfix stocked in some big stores over there. They've got the full Humbrol range into Hobbycraft, and they're looking to get the Poker diecast brand into China. There's no mention of European markets here, although further down it suggests that European revenue has decreased as a result of the global cost of living crisis impacting European markets. However, further down still, the rest of Europe is the only part of the group that makes any profit. UK, USA, Spain and Italy are all loss-making, so maybe the rest of Europe is where the profits are. The next section on capital expenditure talks about the balance between spending money to support existing customers versus spending to make products that will attract new customers. And it's a bit vague, but again, like the insights section, it gives the impression that they know they need to change to attract new customers and stay in the game, but doesn't really say what they've got planned. The next section is basically saying that the Corgi Model Club that they acquired quite recently is doing very well, and that they're selling the loss-making Oxford Diecast brand. And I made a video about the Oxford Diecast brand, I'll put a link up here. I like Oxford Diecast products, and I think independence from Hornby might be a good thing for them. However, the disposal has been quite costly, with impairments to goodwill and intangibles costing them around 300,000. At year end, the amount of stock was way too high, and they've managed to bring that down by 7%, which is good. On the model railway side, we've seen quite a few promotional sales, which might have helped, and it sounds like Oxford Diecast stock was part of the problem. That's going, so hopefully the inventory level should be significantly lower by year end. The next section is again very interesting, and a viewer tipped me off about this a while back, but Hornby have cut quite a few jobs to try and bring their central costs under control. It doesn't say which jobs went, but it must have been quite a substantial number, as it will reduce their annualised people costs by about £1 million. Reducing headcount is often expensive in the year that you do it because Often those people get redundancy payments, although it doesn't appear to have cost them too much, as only $56,000 was reported as an exceptional item in relation to restructuring. The next few sections aren't particularly interesting from my point of view. They've made changes to their logistics and distribution services, they've appointed a new non-exec chairman, and they've brought digital marketing in-house, which will save them some money. But onto the bit I like, the numbers, and things generally seem to be going in the right direction. Revenue was up by 10% compared with the same time last year at 25 million. They're still making a loss, but the operating loss of 3.8 million was less than the operating loss of 4.1 million at the same point last year. However, after taking into account the exceptional one-off costs relating to the disposal of Oxford Diecast and the headcount reduction, plus some cash flow hedging and foreign exchange losses, the total loss ends up being bigger than the same time last year. But those exceptional items should be seen as short-term pain for long-term gain. However, despite inventory levels coming down, revenues going up and them spending less on capital projects, they still needed to borrow another 4.3 million, which has increased their net debt to 18.8 million. And that's a large amount to be borrowing for the size of the business. And the interest costs were already over $1 million for the first half of the year. So that's where they were at the end of September 2024 and halfway through the 3-year turnaround plan. Plenty of insights, reduced central headcount, new market opportunities, positive revenue growth, lower inventories, but higher borrowing. The trading statement for January doesn't give as much information as the half-year report, but it does let us know how the big Christmas trading period went. And they even made the news with a back on track headline from the BBC. However, whilst positive, they're not back in the black just yet. Group sales for the third quarter to 31st of December 2024 were 7% ahead of the same period last year. And for the financial year to date, we're 8% ahead of last year, and gross profits are ahead by 10%. They say that Black Friday and Christmas massively contributed to those increases, and that 50% of all Black Friday transactions came from first-time customers, up from 42% in 2023. And new customers are a key part of their strategy. But I'd like to know how they define new customers. Are these customers that bought directly from Hornby for the first time, or customers who are new to the hobby? I suspect they're just new direct sales customers, many of whom may well have been Hornby customers before, but just buying via retailers. I'm one of those people. Hornby started doing more promotional discounts and introduced the loyalty scheme, so on a few occasions it made sense to buy direct from them. And that might increase their margins slightly, but it's not going to save the business in the long run if they're still selling the same amount of stock just via a different channel. I still think direct sales from Hornby make life harder for the high street model shops, and that's more likely to damage the hobby overall. Their margins for the quarter were 48%, up from 44% in the same period in 2023, and their net debt reduced by 0.6 million to 18.2 million at the end of December. Slow-moving inventory has been a big issue for them, but they've been chipping away at it. They've got it down from 21.5 million at the end of March to 16.6 at the end of December. So that's actually really positive, and it sounds like the decisions taken over the last 21 months have made a big positive impact. But I wonder if Hornby have picked all the low-hanging fruit to get to this position. Selling Oxford Diecast, cutting their headcount, and successfully putting in the price increases were the relatively obvious, quick-to-implement big impact changes. I wonder if they've exhausted these relatively easy wins, and that now everything they have to do will be harder and take more time to yield results. And they'll need to make those more difficult changes if they want to get Hornby profitable again. Will their international strategy work and grow? Will they consider exploring new directions in other brands, as they did with TT120 for the railways? Do they have the money to make those kind of investments? It'll be interesting to see what their financial statements look like later this year, 2 years into their 3-year turnaround plan. Finally, let's talk about the 2025 railway range. But before we look at the product, let's talk about the launch itself. Hornby has previously hinted that they would be moving away from the big annual launch and be going for more regular product announcements. But it seems like the big annual launch event continues, and I suppose they're kind of stuck with that because they still publish the catalogue annually. But okay, if you're doing an annual launch, then in my opinion, this needs to be the event that kickstarts the year, gets everyone excited, and it needs to be good. My first observation was that the launch was scheduled to take place at 8 AM on a Tuesday morning. Is that the best time for getting the largest audience? Maybe that was an insight-driven decision, but I wonder if there would have been a more impactful time to put the video out. In any case, it appears that the video was accidentally released at 8 PM the night before. It was briefly available to view before being taken down, but it was up long enough for quite a few screenshots to be taken and for them to be shared on social media. Fortunately, and slightly disappointingly, there weren't any real surprises in the range, so not a massive deal and no cats were let out of the bag. And then when the premiere did go up at 8 AM, we had technical difficulties. The sound cut out after around 10 minutes. Hornby then directed everyone in the chat to another video, which was initially private, but eventually was viewable, and we were able to see the range with sound. Sadly, the email that went out had a link to the video that no longer exists. So, okay, mistakes happen, but as a launch event goes, it could have been better. Previously, they've been criticised for the length of these launch videos. The 2023 video went on for over an hour. Last year and this year, they've been under 30 minutes, which is a sensible length of time, but the format made it feel incredibly rushed, with model after model being listed off with no information about features. I maybe would have grouped similar products together and just highlighted the ones with new or special liveries. In terms of the actual range though, I thought it was pretty good. Notably, there was no TT120, it was all 00, and I think that makes sense to keep them separate, but they need to make that clearer. It just says range launch, not 00 range launch. I suspect that TT120 modelers tuning in might have been a bit disappointed. The strategy says that they want to get more people into the hobby via train sets, and I think they'll achieve that because the train set offering this year is pretty good and the prices are reasonable. I suspect the Azuma set will go down really well, and they've confirmed that extra coaches will be available for it, which was a big issue with the previous GWR and Javelin train sets. I think the nostalgic sets will also do well, they look really good, and what you get in them is actually okay. It's interesting they've relaunched the Santa Express train set, making it even more toy-like. It's now battery powered and it comes with plastic track and what looks like massive magnetic couplings. Personally, I wouldn't have even included that in this range. It's got nothing to do with 00 scale models. It's a seasonal gimmick toy train set now. They should have saved that and launched it separately in October, November time in the run up to Christmas. The newly tooled Saints look really good. I expect Lady of Legend will sell very well as she's very popular at Steam galas. Although with an RRP of £235 for a DCC ready model, it will need to deliver in terms of quality and features. The Tavern cars look fun, although with an RRP of £140 for the pair, they're quite the investment. Mike mentions in the video that these coaches were made to look like the taverns on the interior. I wouldn't mind paying £140 if Hornby had made the effort to replicate that unique interior, and I would want lighting, although I suspect they haven't as there's no mention of this on the website. I think the Birth of the British Railways locomotive pack is good value if you want all 3 early era locomotives and don't currently have any. They're not perfect models operationally, but they're visually stunning. It's good to see that the steam technology continues to be used in Cock of the North. It'll be interesting to see how long this steam generator technology continues and whether it's widely adopted. The Avanti 805 and 390 train packs look good to me. I'd be interested in those. I think the pricing of their standard coaches and rolling stock from older tooling is still too high given the features and qualities of the model. They've jumped on the brewery livery bandwagon with these tankers, except that when Daypool do it, they cost just over 10 quid, whereas Hornby's cost over £20. And obviously the Beatles tat must be selling well because they've slapped more album artwork on the long wheelbase wagons from the 70s. The tooling for that wagon must be exhausted, but if it sells, then it sells and Hornby really need the money. I thought they dropped the Play Trains range, but they were hinted at, so I assume they're still alive. No information was given though, and I think that's wise. They probably deserve their own marketing videos. I was really disappointed that HM7000 wasn't mentioned at all. The new TXS sound decoders are a huge success story for Hornby. They're just so overlooked in these announcements. Anyway, we're all up to date on Hornby's business performance. Let me know your thoughts on Hornby and the new range. If you'd like to order anything from the range, then I'll drop affiliate links down below. That's about it for this video though. Special thanks to all the YouTube members and patrons for your support. It's very much appreciated and your names are up on the screen now. If you enjoyed this video, then please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I will hopefully see you again soon.